to be more like you. God, I will praise you for what I know you're going to accomplish in your precious and holy name. Amen. It seemeth to me, it is as it were, a plague in the house. Now, I think there's some important things we need to discuss if we're going to talk about sin, if we're going to talk about how to handle sin. And I would say the first and foremost, probably the most important thing, is we're going to have to agree to call sin sin. We're going to have to agree that sin is not something that's gray, that it's a black and white thing, that it dishonors God and it separates us from Him. And if I were going to have you take notes, the first thing I would want you to write down is that sin must be recognized. It says here in verse 35, it seemeth to me there is, as it were, a plague in the house. If I could translate that, if I could modernize it, he said, I don't quite know what's wrong, but it seems that there's something in my life that's not quite right. It seems that there's something going on in my life. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know exactly how to fix it, but it seems that there's something out of whack in my life, and I don't know what it is, but I know that it's there. Maybe the way you know this is it seems that there's a distance between you and God. It seems that you are not as close as you once were. That the fire that used to burn in you, that used to excite you, has died down to a bed of embers. That maybe you no longer desire and long to come into the house of God. You no longer desire and look for opportunities to talk about Him. Maybe you can go longer and longer and further without communicating with Him. But whatever the case is, it just seems like there's something missing. There's something wrong, and you maybe can't put your finger on it, but you know that there's something not right. When we're at home, quite often I have the opportunity to travel to local churches and maybe fill in the pulpits of the ones that don't have pastors or things like that. And so when I go, I generally would go by myself so that my family can go to our home church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I do in church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I do in church. And on the majority, I would dare say all of these occasions, I go in, I preach the morning, I do what I that I am away from God, I'm separate from God, I'm drifting from God, I'm no longer where I used to be, that's a very good indicator that I have sin separating me from God, that I have something in between us. What makes me a sinner? We've covered most of that. We don't need to give the litany, the list of things. What we need to know is that if I'm going to deal with the sin, then the first thing is I need to admit that there's sin. I have to be willing to recognize my own sin. But it doesn't start here. It doesn't end here. Part of recognizing my own sin is being willing to acknowledge it to the proper authority. Let me explain what I mean here. Let's say, for example, that I am a thief. And I'm a really good thief. I can take your car in 30 seconds flat and you won't even know that I'm there. I am a really, really good thief. And if I come in here tonight and I tell you that I'm a really good thief, that I tell you that I've stolen many cars and I've never been caught, and I begin to describe to you how and where and when, and I confess all of this to you, does it change the fact that I'm a thief? Is there anyone in here that has the authority to stop me from being a thief? But if I drive over here to y'all's local police department, and I go into the desk sergeant, and I introduce myself and say, hey, my name's Dan McElroy. I just wanted you to know I'm a really good thief. I'm a car thief, and in fact, I've already stolen 2 cars while I've been in town this week. Oh, now that's a whole different situation. Because now I'm speaking to somebody that has the authority to do something about what I'm saying. What are you getting at? You come down here to church, tell your preacher all day long things that are wrong in your life. It might help your conscience, but it ain't gonna fix the thing. You come down here to this altar and announce everything in your life that's wrong to the folks in this room. It ain't gonna change a thing. But you get on your face before God. You get on your face before God. You begin to tell Him, Lord, I have this in my life, and I have that in my life. Or I'll go as far as to say, Lord, I'm not even sure what I have in my life, but there's something that's keeping us apart. And God, I just want you to show it to me. And you begin to pour your heart out. Verse 35 said that they shall come and tell the priest. Who did Hebrews say our priest was? Christ is my priest. I don't go to a man. I don't go to a person. Christ is my high priest. In another place in Hebrews it says, wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, Christ Jesus. Christ is my priest. And if I'm going to fix a sin problem in my life, not only do I need to first recognize that there's a problem, but I need to take it to the person that can do something about it. I need to get on my face before the God that created me, before the one that sacrificed himself for me, and let him deal with the sin in my life. Now notice here in this passage, it didn't say after the owner of the house goes inside and cleans it up real good, then he should call the priest. It didn't say after he went and fixed the problem, after he did the part that he could handle on his own. It said when he thinks that there might possibly be something wrong, he goes and he gets the priest. And it's the same way in our life. We don't wait till it's out of control. We don't wait till it's something that we can no longer handle. We don't wait and see if it's something that I can fix on my own. When I believe that there's something amiss between me and God, I cry out. I call my high priest and I try to get it right and I try to get it back in alignment. Can I tell you why that is? Because sin is not something I control. Sin is something that controls me. Sin is something that once it gets a hold of your life, the Bible refers to it as a roaring lion. And far too often in our Christian life, we want to treat sin like it's our little pet kitten. And we feed it, and we pet it, and we play with it, and we talk about how we can take care of it. And the Bible says, no, it's a roaring lion, and it's seeking to destroy you. And it's looking for an opportunity to kill you. You say, oh, preacher, that's not me. I don't have any of that in my life. Really? See, I've driven through your town now a couple of times in the last few days, and y'all have folks here that cut you off just like they do in Chicago. Y'all have folks around here that drive slow and aggravating just like they do back in Indiana. And I'm pretty sure that if you're even remotely like me on the right day with the right person in front of you, you probably get angry at them. You probably have a few thoughts in your head that you wouldn't want me to put up here on this big screen behind me. You say, oh, preacher, we ain't talking about that. Well, how about this? How about on Sunday morning when you and the family are getting ready to come to church and the kids are misbehaving and the car won't start and you're already 20 minutes late and you go to get in the car and you holler at your wife because she's not doing what you wanted? Oh, you mean like that? You know why I know that's a sin? It don't matter what I've ever done in my life. God's never hollered at me. God's never gotten angry at me even when I deserved it. And if I'm supposed to pattern myself after him, what gives me the right to holler at her? What gives me the right to fight and bicker with my kids? Not only do we need to recognize our sin, but that's not enough. Same thing that if I were going to have you write it down, I would tell you, sin must be revealed. Look with me at verse 36. It says, then the priest shall command that they empty the house. He said, I want you to get everything in the house and get it out in plain sight. Drag it out in the light so it can be looked at. Far too often, when we want to deal with God, what we do is we set up the rails and the bumpers and the dividers and the little rules, and we say, God, you can look over here. You can help me with this problem. God, that'd be okay, but I really need you to stay away from this part over here, God, because this is mine. And the priest, or the Bible said, when you call the priest in the house, what I need you to do is I need you to empty it all out. I need you to drag it all out into the open, get it all out into the sunlight. Not just the big things, not just the public things, but the little bitty dark things that we keep locked away in the closet, the stuff that nobody knows about, the stuff that your spouse doesn't even know about. We drag it all out. Why do we do that? Verse 36 keeps going. It says, then the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priests go into it to see the plague. Why? That all that is in the house be not made unclean. Can I put it to you like this? Sin left hidden destroys everything around it. If we bury it and we cover it up and we hide it and we don't talk about it and we think that it'll handle itself, it'll destroy everything around it. You've all heard the cliche, one bad apple spoils the bunch. I don't know about apples, but I guarantee you that that's true for sin. There is no such thing as a hidden sin, and it will absolutely eventually expose itself. And far too often, we come to God, and we bring the little things. And we say, God, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you this. God, you can have this. And we offer them like they were offerings. Like somehow we were doing a good thing by giving God, and then we hold back all of the stuff that he actually wants. And we have this thought that somehow, if I just give him a little bit, it'll appease him. He'll turn a blind eye to the rest of us. He'll look the other way. God said, get it all out. Everything that's in the house needs to come out so that it can be looked at, so that it can be inspected. Back during the very beginning of COVID, when it first came out, and we were all in our homes, and 2 weeks to let it all pass, and we were all locked down. I don't know about you guys, but one of the things we did in my house was we started going through different rooms and cleaning them up, cleaning them out, almost like spring cleaning. And then we went from maybe bedrooms into closets. And one of the closets that we went into our house, there was stuff that's been in there since we moved in. And we moved in like 15 years ago. There was stuff in my closets that I didn't even know that I owned anymore. Can I tell you, that's exactly what he's looking for. He wants us to get it and get it all and drag it out into the light so that the priest, so that Christ can look and examine our lives and he can tell us what it is that's separating us. Because you might have some things that you have long since forgotten, buried away in your life. Bitterness, unresolved anger, relationships that were broken that should have never been broken. Things that you have all but blocked out or that you have justified to the point that you don't even think about it anymore. And he said, get it all and drag it out. I'm going to run through this next part, starting in verse 37. It says, and he shall look on the plague, and behold, if the plague be in the walls of the house with hollow straits, greenish or reddish, which inside are lower than the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall come again the 7th day and shall look, and behold, if the plague be spread in the walls of the house. As I read this, and the idea of inspecting and looking at the house and seeing an issue and then closing it up for a time and walking away, the best description, the best application I can give you of that is conviction. God comes by. Maybe you even invited him, if you will. Lord, there's something between us. And God says, well, yeah, you're right. We've got this problem, and we've got this problem, and we've got this, and I need you to take care of it. And then God backs up. Because the God I serve is a perfect gentleman. He will never force you to do like you do. And a few days later, maybe another service, maybe the next time that you're studying or meditating or praying, he comes along and he says, hey, that stuff's still there. We haven't fixed that problem yet. You've kind of organized it and sorted it out, but it's still there. And then he backs up a little bit and he waits. See what you're going to do. And it says that if it's left alone, it'll spread in the walls of the house. And we sit in church week after week. God pricks our hearts. God convicts us about something in our life that's separating us from him. And we hear him, and we listen, we think, it's not a big deal. I'll take care of it later. That ain't really hurting nobody. What we don't understand is pretty soon that thing that was just a little stain, a little nothing, as we would call it, now it's grown and it's spread and it's started to embed itself into the very fabric of our lives. See, this is what sin does. Sin grows, sin infects, it moves like a disease or a virus. It mutates and it spreads until it's in every facet, in every area of your life, and then it kills you. That's what sin does. And if, when we call God in and he says, deal with this, and we don't, at the first notice, at the first sign, we don't, it sets in and it spreads. Can I tell you that not only do we need to recognize sin, not only do we need to reveal the sin, but if we're going to get it taken care of, the third thing you know is sin must be removed. Look at verse 40 with me. We're going to hurry through this. Verse 40 says, then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which the plague is, and they shall cast them into an unclean place without the city. And he shall cause the house to be scraped within round about, and they shall pour out the dust that they scrape off without the city into an unclean place. If we're going to get things right between us and God, we can't cover it up. We can't plaster over it. We can't put a new coat of paint on it. We can't just dress it up and call it good. The Bible says we need to get it out. The verse says, cut away, take away the stones. The very structural nature of the house, the things that were integral to the wall. He said, cut them out because they're more dangerous in the wall than they are when you cut them out. The same way that we would do surgery. He said, I want you to cut it, and I want you to scrape everything that it touched, and I want you to get it out. How many of you have ever been through any kind of surgery in a hospital? I would imagine a lot of us. It's really not normally a pleasant experience, is it? They go in and they cut you and they move things that you don't even know why they moved, and then they stitch you all back up. And I don't know about you, but I've been through probably more than I dare to count. And the surgery itself was rarely the part that it hurt. It was the waking up afterward and feeling the pain of where they went in. But a little while later, when the healing had set in, when things were going back to normal in the way they belonged, the relief was so much greater than whatever the surgery was caused by. I was in a car wreck many years ago, and I won't elaborate on it, but it should have killed me. It broke the majority of the bones in my upper body. I had 14 fractures in my neck. I broke all my ribs. I crushed my right arm. Many, many other ones. When I went to get my arm fixed, the very last surgery they did for me, it hurt all the time. So I volunteered to go get a surgery that was somewhat experimental. And when I woke up, I was in so much pain that I said to Linda, I cannot believe that I volunteered to do this. That was the stupidest thing ever. But about a week later, as the pain went away and the swelling came down, and all of a sudden an arm that hadn't hardly moved in over 2 years could be bent, could be moved, could be used, then I understood what the surgery was for. Can I tell you, when we cut the sin out of our life, it's not always going to be a pleasant experience. It's not going to be something that in the moment we're going to go, wow, this is really cool. I've been looking forward to this. But can I tell you that if we don't do it, the result that would follow would be devastating. Had I have left my arm the way it was, my right arm would not move at the elbow. It was frozen in a 90-degree angle. I couldn't open it, I couldn't close it. Because of that, I had terrible shoulder pain because I was always misusing the joint. If they had left my right arm the way it was, it would have been excruciating for the rest of my life. But instead, I went through a few days of discomfort. And although I would not say I have 100% arm, I have 100% more than I did before they operated on it. And if we will let God surgically clean up our lives, take what needs to be taken. Verse 41 went as far as to say, and he shall cause the house to be scraped. I'm a very vivid person when I read, and I can hear that. He said, I don't want just the sin. I want everything that it's touched. I want everything that it's infected. I want every part of your life that it's creeped into. I want to get all the way down to the very dust. Far too many times, what we want to do is just cover it up, because that's a lot easier. We just put a fresh coat of paint on it. In Matthew, when Christ was speaking to the Pharisees, he said, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. That's exactly what our sin is like, particularly when we try to put on the look. We've got it all taken care of. God said, I want to cut it out. I want to get it out. I want to get rid of it in your life. And notice what it said they were going to do with it in verse 40. It said, and they shall cast them, these stones, this dust that had been cut out, they shall cast them into an unclean place without the city. Can I tell you something? When you cut the things, or you get the things out of your life that need to go away, they need to go away. Here's what I'm saying. You got a problem with pills, you don't get to put them in the kitchen cabinet or in the bathroom cabinet in case somebody comes along later that might need one of them. You got a problem with a bottle, you don't get to keep it under the shelf in the garage in case Uncle Joe comes by because he likes a little bit now and then. Get it out of your life, get it out of your life until it hurts somebody else. You've got a problem with your stewardship, with your giving, with your finances. I would dare say cut your credit cards up and throw them away. Don't hang on to them for an emergency because you'll find a reason to use them. When we're going to get things cleaned up in our lives, we can't hang on to it and hope that it won't bother us anymore. We've got to get them out of our lives and make sure they're gone. It went as far as to say to take them without the city. You know why it did that? So that it wouldn't be passed on to somebody else. If they took these stones that were covered in what we would consider a mold or a creeping virus, and they just piled them up out in the front lawn, some other poor guy might come by and go, wow, I was just looking for some stones to put an addition on my house. And he'd take all those stones back to his place and put them in. When we take sin and we don't truly get rid of it, can I tell you, maybe it'll be our children that come by and pick it up. Maybe it'll be our grandchildren that come by and pick it up. Maybe it'll be some Sunday school kid or some new convert or some church member that's in your life that sees what you have and says, well, if they handle it, maybe I can handle it. And when we cut this stuff out of our life, we've got to get rid of it, gone forever and far away, so it can never touch anyone else. I've said if we have sin, we have to recognize the sin. We have to reveal the sin. We have to remove the sin. And you would say, surely that's good enough. We're all done, right? Nope. There's one more very important step, that if we're going to recover from this surgery of the removal of sin that's separating us from God, there's something we need to know. Sin must be replaced. Verse 42 says, and they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and shall plaster the house. Who's the he in this verse? It's the high priest. It's Christ. And he shall take other stones and other mortar. Can I tell you, when there's a hole in your life, something will fill it. Something will find its way into it. Nature abhors a vacuum. You've heard that principle? When I have a hole in my life where I've cut something out of, and I leave it that way, and I don't replace that sinful thing with something else, I guarantee you, write it down, Satan will find something that fits perfect in that hole. And he'll come along and he'll help you get over whatever it was you thought you were struggling with, and he'll slip this new thing in, and half the time you won't even realize it until it's too late. Can I tell you that willful sin that's left back into our life is the worst kind of sin to get rid of. And when we go about this process of getting things out of our life that don't belong, we need to make sure we're putting something healthy in behind it. That we're allowing the priest, that we're allowing God to fill the hole with something useful. You say, what are you talking about? Well, maybe you got a problem with things coming in on your on your phone, on your computer, on your television, that you ought not be spending time in. Maybe you can take the time that you used to fill with that and go get your Bible out. Go dig into this book and see what the Lord has to say. Maybe you can take that time and decide you're just going to start praying for your preacher, that God would use him in a powerful way. Maybe you used to have a problem getting on the phone and running down every person in the church you can think of. So maybe what you can do is get a hold of the prayer list and start calling around and checking in on people and letting them know that you're praying for them and letting them know that you're worried about them and seeing how you can help them. And you find a way to take the time or the object of what was wrong before and repurpose and use that for God. And watch what he can do with it. Verse 43, look at this remainder. I want you to see how this will finish up. And if the plague come again and break out in the house, after after that he hath taken away the stones, and after he hath scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come back and look, and behold, if the plague be spread in the house, it is a fretting leprosy. It means it's a growing, returning leprosy in the house, and it is unclean. Listen to me, verse 45. And he shall break down the house, and the stones of it, and the timber thereof, and all the mortar of the house, and he shall carry them forth out of the city into an unclean place. Say, preacher, what's it say? There's a point that if you're not going to get the sin out of your life, God will quit working. That's not my opinion. That's not my thought. It's what my Bible tells me. When sin is left undealt with, it will ruin you. Sin left unchecked or welcomed back into your life will tear down the house of your life. Persistent, willful sin is a destroyer of life. James put it like this. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. Sin is not here to entertain you. Sin is not here to see how much fun you can have and whether or not you can control it. Sin is here to kill you. And I've watched it happen over and over and over. We can drag it down to this altar 100,000 times. But if we just pick it back up and take it home with us, it's going to kill us, folks. God wants it out of your life. He'll take it out of your life. He'll give you something to fill it with if you'll let him. My girls are going to come and help me. I want to close with an illustration story. Now, I don't tell it often because it doesn't speak well of me, but I think it's fitting. Years ago, after I had the terrible car wreck that broke all my bones up, I was married. In fact, I think we probably had at least Abigail by that time. And I got sick one fall. What I assumed was the flu. The flu was going around, and I got pretty sick. And like all good men, I don't go to doctors. I had my fill of doctors when I was in the hospital. They don't have nothing that I ain't already seen. So I went to bed, sleep it off. It'll be gone. Got up the next day, I felt worse. This don't make sense. So I went back to sleep. She'd come wake me up every once in a while and say, hey, want to go to the doctor? No. Leave me alone. Give me a day or so. This will go away. About a week went by. I was still laying in the bed, but by this point I had covered all the windows up with curtains and blankets and anything I could to keep the light out. Because when the light would hit my eyes, I would want to scream with pain. I couldn't imagine what kind of flu would act like this. One day the phone rang, and I just let it go. She came in, she said, hey, your dad's on the phone, wants to talk to you. I said, tell him I'm sick. She said, no, you need to talk to him. What I didn't know is my loving wife went and told my daddy on me. So I picked up the phone, wasn't very happy about it. I said, Dad, what do you want? I don't really feel good. He said, yeah, I know that. He said, I want you to get out of bed. He said, I'm not getting out of bed. I'm sick, I told you. He said, I need you to get out of bed and go to the hospital. I said, Dad, I ain't going to the hospital. I don't like hospitals. He said, all right, let me ask you something. He said, I want you to look at your legs. He said, maybe you're standing on your legs, I want you to look at your arms. He said, you see a line? It might be purple, it might be bright red, running up and down one of your legs or your arms. Dad, would you just leave me alone? I don't know. I'm in bed. And I picked up my right arm and I looked. And there was a big purple line. It started down around my wrist and run up past my elbow. I said, Dad, that's a pretty cool trick. How'd you know that was there? He said, you can get to the hospital right now. So I got out of bed and I drove to the hospital. I kid you not, I walked up to the waiting desk. I said, listen, if y'all are really busy, you got something else going on, you got too many patients, you just tell me I'm going to go home because I don't want to be here. But I said, if you got a minute, I said, I got this line. I don't know what it is, and I don't feel good. She said, how long you had it? I said, I don't know. I just saw it today. I've been sick for probably a week. She said, oh, well, who told you to come in? I told her the story. Dad told me. She said, well, you could have stayed home. She said, we can come got you tomorrow. So we talking about, my doctor don't make house calls. She said, no, we just at the corner. He'd come pick you up. See, what I didn't know is I had a cellular blood infection. And it had gotten inside my arm where all those broken bones used to be. And it was working its way up my arm. And it was on the way to my heart. She said, you were about 12 hours from dead. They took me in, they put me in a room, strapped me to a bunch of IVs. And for 3 or 4 days, they kept pumping stuff in me. At one point, the doctor came in and he was examining my arm, and I said, Doc, it looks pretty good. The line's about gone. I feel better. He said, yeah, but we really got to watch. He said, we're afraid that it got into the marrow of your bone. He said, if it got in the marrow, we're going to have to cut the arm off. Excuse me? He said, we might have to cut your arm off. I said, Doc, I had the flu. We don't cut arms off for the flu. He said, no, you had a cellular infection. If it gets inside your bones, you'll be dead. He said, we might cut your arm off. Do you know why all that happened? Because I laid in bed. I said, I don't need no doctor. This ain't a big deal. I can take care of it. I'm a man. Handle this. It'll be all right. And I was 12 hours from dead. Because I wouldn't go see the one that could fix it. Because I wouldn't swallow my pride. Go talk to the one that knew more than I did. That knew how to take care of it. When I finally did, they got me the medicine I needed. And in a few days, I was home again. But if I waited just a little bit longer, said I can take care of this. I'll take more NyQuil. I'll take more. I'll do something. She'd have buried me. That's exactly what sin will do in your life. You'll be in full control right up to the day they put you in the ground. I ain't here to scare you. I'm not here to alarm you. I'm here to tell you the truth. Sin seeks to destroy. We have the opportunity when we look in our lives and we say, it seemeth to me that there is a plague in the house. There's something separating me from God. I don't know what it is, but I want to get it fixed. Tonight I'm offering you that opportunity. I'm not talking about salvation, folks. I'm talking about getting what's between you and God, cleaning it up. I'm talking to His children tonight. I'm talking to those of us that would profess that we know Him as our Savior. Are you walking as close to Him as you used to? Do you talk to Him as often as you used to? Do you share Him as often as you used to? Is that gap just a little bit bigger? Just a little bit wider? It seemeth to me there is a plague in the house. I ask you to stand to your feet with your head bowed and your eyes closed. Lord, I want to thank you for your grace, for your mercy, for your love. God, for every time that I walked away, you welcomed me back with open arms. God, I want to praise you for who you are. God, as we bring this service to a close, I'm asking, Lord, I'm begging. I don't want you to nudge. I don't want you to whisper. God, I want you to scream into the hearts of your children. God, I want you to shine a spotlight and show them the divide that has crept into their lives. God, let them know that you still love them if they'll just come back. God, I will praise you for how good you are. My girls are going to sing. I'm not going to draw this out. I believe it would be foolish for a single person in this room to believe that there's not a single thing in your life that's in between you and God. So instead, I'm going to open this altar, and I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't take the opportunity to get it right. And then I'm going to stop talking because I'm going to get down here and I'm going to pray to the one that saved me. And I hope you do the same.
I have what you need, but you keep on searching. I've done all the work, but you keep on working, running on empty, and you can't find relief. Just come to it. You can spend your whole life chasing what's missing, but be empty inside. You just ain't gonna listen. Nothing can satisfy, and the world leaves you high and dry. Just come to the wind. And all who thirst will thirst no more, and all who search will find what their soul was born for. The world can try, but it'll never fail. Leave it all behind. It comes to now that you're full of love beyond measure, well, your joy's gonna flow like a stream in the desert. Soon all the world will see living water.
There is, as it were, a place in the house. I'm going to put it to you like this. I'm going to give it back to your preacher. I go to churches all over this country, week in and week out. I talk to pastors. I talk to church members. I'm seeing the same thing. We're on a downward slide. I dare say we're on a downward run. Our churches are closing by mind-boggling numbers. And I have but only one reason. It seemeth to me there is, as it were, a plague in the house. And we are losing the fight. And I am here tonight to plead with you. You don't have to get it right on this altar. I just want you to get it right. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen if you don't. You can believe me or not, but I've watched it. I've been doing this for 10 years. We'll get together this week and we'll have a good time. We'll laugh and we'll sing and we'll talk about God. And next year, I'll start making phone calls to see where I'm going to go preach. Maybe I'll call Brother Joe and he'll say, well, man, I'd love to have you back, but we closed the door 3 months ago. Not because we ran out of money. Not because it was a health problem. people quit coming, quit caring, they quit wanting God. And I've watched it over and over and over. And it seemeth to me that there is, as it were, a plague in the house. Brother Joe. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Most of you have probably seen it was on most all of the news channels, because I think they like publicizing stuff like this, that we have right now in America, Gallup took a poll, we have the most people ever polled who do not believe in God in America. It's falling continuously every year. It's horrible. It's horrible. And Gallup's not even a Christian organization, but news media is published because I think they're kind of bragging about it, because they like to get God out of society. So, church, we got to do something. We got to pray. We got one more night, tomorrow night. And I appreciate the messages. We got to confess some things and deal with some things. And I think one of the biggest sins in churches today is apathy. Yes, sir. I do. Yeah. Yes, sir. But may God bless you tonight. We want to invite all of you to stay. I've been giving Jason a rough time. We're going to eat his leftover pork, but it was good. Amen, Jason? Yeah. And so Jenny has been over there, and I think Christy and Katie's over there now helping out. And so we'll have pork sandwiches. I think they've got some other things as well. So I want all of you that will stay and please help us finish that up, because the dogs won't eat it. All right, but stay and help us finish it up. We'll get rid of it. So may the Lord bless you tonight. Thank you, girls. I appreciate the whole family and all of you so much. Pray back tomorrow night. Invite some folks to come. Bring some folks out. And pray for Daniel as he finishes up. God will give him the message to finish this out. And so we want to go to the Lord in prayer. And I want to ask William, would you dismiss us in a word of prayer? Please ask the blessing on the food as well.
For today, and I thank you for the blessings. I thank you for your ear. I thank you for the McMore family. I thank you for our pastor.
God, we just praise you.
Thank you for our church. Thank you for the work that you've given us. I thank you most of all for your mercy.
God help you, Lord bless.
I thank you for saving me. I thank you for my children and my grandchildren and my wife. I thank you for my work. I thank you for those people that patronize us.
Bless you, Lord.
Father, I just thank you all about the blessings that I just can't measure. I ask now, Father, that you bless this congregation as they fellowship together, that you bless the food to the nourishment of our bodies and each one of tonight's service, for Christ's sake we pray. Amen.
Amen.